She texted her ex's number out of desperation, but the reply came from a millionaire. Maya Chen stared at the eviction notice taped to her apartment door, her hands trembling as she read the bold black letters for the third time. 30 days. That was all she had left before she and her 8-year-old daughter Emma would be homeless. The gallery where she had worked as an assistant curator had closed its doors permanently just 2 weeks ago, another casualty of the economic downturn that seemed to be swallowing small businesses whole. She fumbled with her keys, her vision blurring with unshed tears as she unlocked the door to their modest 2-bedroom apartment. The sound of cartoons drifted from the living room, and she quickly wiped her eyes before Emma could see her distress. Her daughter had been through enough upheaval in her young life, especially after her father had walked out on them 3 years ago without so much as a goodbye. "Mommy, you're home early," Emma called out, not taking her eyes off the television screen where animated characters were singing about friendship and adventure. If only life were that simple, Maya thought bitterly. "Just for a little while, sweetheart. Mommy has some calls to make," she replied, forcing cheerfulness into her voice as she retreated to her bedroom and closed the door behind her. Maya sank onto her unmade bed and pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts with increasing desperation. Her parents had passed away in a car accident when Emma was just 2, and she had no siblings. Her few close friends were struggling artists like herself, barely scraping by in the expensive city. There was no one left to turn to except, her thumb hovered over David's name in her contacts. David Torres, her ex-boyfriend who had promised they would build a life together before disappearing one night with half their shared savings and no explanation. She hadn't heard from him in over 2 years, but people didn't just vanish completely, did they? With shaking fingers, she opened a new text message. Her pride screamed at her to stop, but the image of Emma's innocent face and the eviction notice burning in her memory pushed her forward. "David, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I'm desperate. Emma and I are about to be evicted and I lost my job. I hate asking, but if you have any decency left, we need help. Please." She hit send before she could change her mind, then immediately regretted it. David had shown his true colors when he abandoned them. Why would he care now? But as the minutes ticked by, she found herself staring at her phone screen, willing it to light up with a response. 20 minutes later, it did. "I think you have the wrong number, but I couldn't help reading your message. I'm sorry you're going through such a difficult time. If you're comfortable sharing more details, maybe I can help." Maya's heart sank, then flickered with confusion. Wrong number. She checked the contact again. It was definitely David's number, or at least it had been. Maybe he had changed phones, and someone else now had his old number. She should probably apologize and delete the conversation, but something about the stranger's response made her pause. There was kindness in those words, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. "I'm so sorry for bothering you. My ex had this number years ago. I was desperate and thought maybe, never mind. Thank you for being kind to a stranger." The response came quickly. "Don't apologize. Desperation makes us reach for anything that might keep us afloat. I understand that feeling more than you might think. Where are you located? Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places." Maya stared at the message, her rational mind warring with a desperate hope she hadn't felt in months. Who was this person? Why would a complete stranger offer to help someone they'd never met? Every instinct told her to be cautious, but the eviction notice crumpled in her other hand reminded her that caution was a luxury she couldn't afford. San Francisco. Marina District. But really, you don't need to. Say no more. Check your Venmo in an hour. Consider it a gift from someone who believes everyone deserves a second chance. Maya's phone slipped from her nerveless fingers onto the bedspread. 300 miles north of San Francisco, in the small coastal town of Mendocino, James Wellington sat in his cramped apartment above the hardware store where he worked as a handyman. The morning fog rolled in from the Pacific, obscuring the lighthouse that had guided ships safely to shore for over a century. He understood the feeling of needing guidance in treacherous waters. The phone in his calloused hands displayed Maya's desperate message, and something in her words struck a chord deep in his chest. 18 months ago, he had been James Wellington, CEO of Wellington Dynamics, a tech company worth $3 billion. Now he was Jim Watson, a man who fixed leaky faucets and installed kitchen cabinets for elderly tourists who summered in the quaint village. The transformation hadn't been by choice. His business partner and closest friend, Vincent Cross, had discovered James's plan to expose their company's illegal data harvesting operations. What James had thought was a revolutionary social media platform had actually been a sophisticated surveillance tool, selling user information to the highest bidders, including foreign governments. When James threatened to go public, Vincent had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to eliminate him. The car accident had been carefully planned. James was supposed to die in the fiery crash on Highway 1, his body burned beyond recognition. But he had been thrown clear at the last second, left with a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and the terrible realization that his best friend had tried to murder him. A homeless veteran named Jim Watson had found him in the wreckage and died trying to pull him to safety. James had taken the man's identity, using Watson's social security card and sparse documentation to disappear completely. Now, reading Maya's message, he remembered what it felt like to be desperate, to reach out into the darkness and hope someone would answer. He had spent the last year and a half living as a ghost, afraid to contact his own family, watching from afar as Vincent controlled his company and fortune. The loneliness had been suffocating. His fingers moved across the phone screen as he transferred $5,000 to Maya's Venmo account. It was a significant chunk of his carefully hoarded cash, money he had saved from his handyman jobs, but something about her situation reminded him of his own daughter, Caroline, who would be 15 now. He wondered if she even remembered him, or if Vincent had convinced everyone that her father had been unstable, possibly suicidal. "I hope this helps with your immediate needs," he typed. No strings attached. Everyone deserves stability, especially children. The response came quickly, and he could feel the emotion through the screen. "I can't believe this is real. You just saved my daughter's home. Why would you do this for a stranger?" James stared out his small window at the lighthouse beacon cutting through the fog. Why indeed? Perhaps because Maya's desperation reminded him of his own, or because helping her felt like the first meaningful thing he had done since becoming Jim Watson. Maybe it was because he missed being someone who could solve problems instead of hiding from them. "Because kindness shouldn't require explanations," he replied. "Tell me about your daughter. What's her name?" "Emma. She's 8, and she thinks I'm the strongest person in the world. I've been trying so hard not to let her down." "You haven't let her down. Reaching out for help when you need it isn't weakness, it's wisdom. What kind of work did you do at the gallery?" As their conversation continued into the evening, James felt something he hadn't experienced in 18 months, connection. Maya told him about her art, her dreams of opening her own studio someday, her fears about raising Emma alone. In return, he shared carefully edited stories about his own past, describing a daughter he missed terribly and a life that had been stolen from him. "You sound like you understand loss," Maya wrote. "More than I wish I did," he replied, watching the lighthouse beam sweep across the dark ocean. "But maybe that's why we found each other, even by accident." For the first time since becoming Jim Watson, James Wellington allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, he could build something real again. Emma Chen had always been observant, a trait that both delighted and worried her mother. At 8 years old, she noticed when the mailman was late, when their neighbor Mrs. Peterson had gotten her hair cut, and especially when her mother's phone buzzed with increasing frequency throughout the day. "Mommy, who keeps texting you?" Emma asked one afternoon as they shared a peanut butter sandwich for lunch. The kitchen table was covered with Maya's art supplies, watercolors, brushes, and half-finished paintings that she hoped to sell at the weekend farmers market. Maya's cheeks flushed pink as she glanced at her phone, which had just buzzed again. "Just a friend, sweetheart. Someone who's been very kind to us." "Is it Daddy?" Emma's voice was small, hopeful in the way that broke Maya's heart every time. "No, baby. It's someone new. Someone who helped us when we really needed it." Emma nodded solemnly. At 8, she had learned not to ask too many questions about Daddy, who existed only in a few scattered photographs and increasingly faded memories. But she had also learned to recognize the signs when her mother was happy, and lately, Maya smiled more often. The truth was, Maya looked forward to Jim's messages more than she cared to admit. Over the past 3 weeks, their conversations had evolved from grateful exchanges to something deeper. He told her about his work fixing things around the small coastal town where he lived, about the sunsets over the Pacific that reminded him why beauty still mattered in the world. She shared her struggles with single motherhood, her passion for art, and her dreams of creating something lasting. "Emma asked about you today," Maya texted one evening after putting her daughter to bed. "She wanted to know if you were my friend." "What did you tell her?" Came the quick reply. "That you were someone special who came into our lives when we needed kindness most. She said she wants to draw you a picture, but she doesn't know what you look like." There was a long pause before Jim responded. "Tell her I have brown hair and kind eyes. That's what matters most, isn't it?" Maya smiled at her phone, imagining Emma's serious concentration as she carefully drew a portrait of the mysterious man who had saved them. "She'll love that." "Jim, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. You mentioned having a daughter once. Do you ever see her?" Another long pause. Maya began to worry she had overstepped, but finally his response appeared. "I lost the right to see her due to circumstances beyond my control. She's 15 now. I wonder if she even remembers me, or if she thinks I abandoned her. It's the hardest part of my situation, knowing she's out there, maybe hurting, and I can't be the father she deserves." Maya's heart ached for him. "I'm sure she remembers you. Children don't forget love, even when life gets complicated. Emma still talks about her daddy sometimes, even though he left when she was small. Love leaves an imprint. Do you regret having Emma, even though her father left?" "Never. She's the best part of me. Being her mother taught me what real love means, the kind that asks for nothing in return except the chance to keep loving. You're an extraordinary mother, Maya. Emma is lucky to have you. And your daughter is lucky to have been loved by you, even if she can't feel it right now. Maybe someday circumstances will change." That night, James Wellington sat in his small apartment, staring at a photograph he kept hidden in an old book. Caroline at age 13, laughing at something he had said, her dark hair catching the sunlight. He had been a good father once, before Vincent's betrayal had forced him into this shadow existence. Maya's words gave him hope that maybe Caroline did remember their camping trips, their Saturday morning pancakes, the bedtime stories he used to make up about brave princesses and magical kingdoms. The next morning brought a surprise. Maya had sent a photograph, Emma's drawing of him. It showed a tall figure with brown hair and a gentle smile, standing next to a small house with flowers in the yard. In the corner, she had written in careful block letters, "Thank you for helping my mommy. Love, Emma." James stared at the drawing for a long time, emotion tightening his throat. It had been so long since anyone had drawn him into their family picture, even metaphorically. He thought of Caroline's drawings, still tucked away in storage somewhere, probably destroyed by now. "She's an artist like her mother," he texted back. "This is beautiful. Can you tell her it's the most wonderful gift anyone has ever given me? She'll be so happy. Jim. I know we've never met, but I feel like you understand me better than people I've known for years. Is that strange?" "Not strange at all. Sometimes the most important connections happen when we least expect them. You and Emma have given me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" "Hope." As the weeks passed, their daily conversations became an anchor for both of them. Maya found herself falling for a man she had never seen, drawn to his kindness, his wisdom, and the way he listened to her dreams as if they were the most important things in the world. James discovered that caring for Maya and Emma gave him purpose again, a reason to wake up each morning beyond mere survival. Neither of them realized that 300 miles away, Vincent Cross was growing increasingly paranoid about loose ends, and that Jim Watson's careful anonymity was about to be shattered. Vincent Cross stood in his corner office on the 40th floor of Wellington Dynamics, San Francisco's skyline glittering below him like scattered diamonds. 18 months had passed since James Wellington's convenient death, and the company had never been more profitable. The surveillance contracts alone brought in $50 million annually, and their new facial recognition software was being adopted by law enforcement agencies worldwide. But Vincent was not a man who left things to chance, and lately, he had been having doubts. "Sir," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The private investigator you hired is here to see you. Send him in." Detective Marcus Webb was the kind of man who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. Vincent had hired him 6 months ago to tie up loose ends from James's death, specifically to confirm that no evidence remained of their former partnership's illegal activities. "What did you find?" Vincent asked without preamble. Webb placed a manila folder on the mahogany desk. "James Wellington is dead, just like you told me. But there are some irregularities I thought you should know about." Vincent's pulse quickened, but his expression remained neutral. "Such as?" "The homeless man found at the crash site, Jim Watson. His social security number has been active. Someone's been using his identity, working in Mendocino County. Paying taxes, even. Identity theft happens all the time with deceased individuals." "Maybe. But I did some digging. This Jim Watson has been sending money to someone in San Francisco. Significant amounts. That's not typical identity theft behavior." Vincent walked to his window, his mind racing. "Do you have a name?" "Maya Chen. Single mother, lives in the Marina District. The payment started about 3 weeks ago, right around the time she was facing eviction. Curious timing, don't you think?" The name meant nothing to Vincent, but the pattern was troubling. Who would a supposedly dead homeless man's identity thief be sending money to? Unless. "I want surveillance on this Maya Chen," he said quietly. "Full background check, phone records, everything. And I want to know more about whoever is using Watson's identity." "Already on it." "But sir, there's something else. The person using Watson's identity has been careful, but not perfect. I managed to get a partial photo from a security camera at the Mendocino hardware store where he works." Webb slid a grainy photograph across the desk. Vincent picked it up, and his blood turned to ice. The image was blurry, the man's face partially obscured by a baseball cap, but the jawline, the way he held his shoulders. "Impossible," Vincent whispered. "Sir." Vincent's hand trembled slightly as he set down the photograph. James Wellington was supposed to be dead, his body cremated, his ashes scattered in the Pacific. But the man in this photo, despite the changes, despite the different clothes and the working man's tan. "Double the surveillance," Vincent ordered, his voice tight with controlled panic. "And get me everything you can on Maya Chen's communications. If James somehow survived, he's been planning something. And if he's been sending money to some woman in San Francisco, she's part of it." 300 miles north, James was completely unaware that his carefully constructed new life was about to crumble. He was focused on Maya's latest text, which had arrived with a photograph attached. "Emma made you another drawing. She says you're part of our family now, even though we've never met." The new drawing showed 3 figures holding hands, a woman, a little girl, and a tall man with kind eyes. Above them, Emma had written "Our Family" in rainbow letters. James stared at the image, emotion overwhelming him. He had been alone for so long, hiding from the world, that he had forgotten what it felt like to belong somewhere. Maya and Emma had given him that gift without even knowing who he really was. "Maya," he typed, "there's something I need to tell you. My situation is more complicated than I've let on. If we're going to keep building this connection, you deserve to know the truth." Before he could continue typing, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but something made him answer. Jim Watson, the voice was unfamiliar but professional. Yes. This is Detective Sarah Rodriguez with the San Francisco Police Department. I need to speak with you about Maya Chen. She's in danger, and you might be too. James's blood ran cold. What kind of danger? The kind that involves a man named Vincent Cross, a supposed car accident 18 months ago, and a tech billionaire who was presumed dead. Mr. Wellington, I think it's time you came in from the cold. The phone slipped from James's numb fingers. Somehow, they had found him. Worse, they had found Maya. And now the woman he was falling in love with, and her innocent daughter, were caught in the crossfire of a war he had thought he could avoid forever. 20 minutes later, Maya's phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. Maya, my name isn't Jim Watson. It's James Wellington, and I'm about to put you and Emma in terrible danger. Pack a bag and meet me at the address I'm sending. Trust me one more time, and I'll explain everything. Detective Sarah Rodriguez had been investigating Vincent Cross for 8 months, ever since a whistleblower at Wellington Dynamics had come forward with evidence of the company's illegal surveillance operations. What she hadn't expected was to discover that the company's presumed dead founder was actually alive and hiding in plain sight as a small-town handyman. Mr. Wellington, she said as James walked into the safe house in Half Moon Bay, you have no idea how glad I am to see you alive. James barely heard her. His eyes were fixed on Maya, who sat on a couch holding Emma protectively in her arms. The little girl was asleep, exhausted from the hasty departure from their apartment, but Maya's eyes were wide with shock and confusion. You're really him, Maya whispered, studying his face. The James Wellington. The billionaire who supposedly died in a car crash. I'm the man who's been texting you every day for 2 months, James said quietly, kneeling in front of them. I'm the person who cares about you and Emma more than my own safety. The money, the company, the old life, none of that matters compared to keeping you both safe. Emma stirred in her mother's arms, opening sleepy eyes. Mommy? Is this Jim? He looks just like my drawing. Yes, sweetheart, Maya said softly. This is Jim. He came to protect us. Detective Rodriguez cleared her throat. We don't have much time. Vincent Cross discovered your connection to Maya 3 days ago. He's been watching her apartment, monitoring her communications. When he realized you were alive, he panicked. We have evidence that he's planning to eliminate all loose ends. What kind of evidence? James asked. Recordings, financial documents, communication intercepts. The FBI has been building a case against Wellington Dynamics for months, but we needed someone who could testify about Cross's direct involvement in the illegal activities. You're the missing piece, Mr. Wellington. What about Maya and Emma? I won't let them be hurt because of my problems. That's why they're here. Witness protection until Cross is arrested. Which, if everything goes according to plan, will be tonight. Maya spoke for the first time since James had arrived, 18 months. You've been living as someone else for 18 months, thinking you were dead to the world. James nodded, shame coloring his voice. I was a coward. Instead of fighting, I ran. I told myself I was protecting my daughter, but really I was just afraid. You weren't a coward, Maya said firmly, you survived. And somehow, even while you were hiding, you saved us. That's not cowardice, James. That's love. Emma sat up straighter, studying James with the serious expression she wore when trying to understand adult problems. Are you really rich like the men on TV? James couldn't help but smile. I suppose I am. Does that change anything? Emma considered this gravely. Do you still like my drawings? They're the most beautiful drawings in the world. Then I don't care if you're rich. Mommy says what matters is if people are kind. 6 hours later, Vincent Cross was arrested at his penthouse apartment, along with 12 other Wellington Dynamics executives. The FBI raid uncovered enough evidence to dismantle the entire surveillance operation and expose the company's illegal activities. James's testimony, combined with the whistleblower evidence and Detective Rodriguez's investigation, ensured that Vincent would spend the rest of his life in prison. 3 months after that, James Wellington stood in the garden of his Marin County estate, watching Maya set up an easel near the rose bushes. Emma was exploring the grounds with his daughter Caroline, who had flown in from boarding school the moment she learned her father was alive. The reunion had been tearful, joyful, and healing for both of them. "Second thoughts?" Maya asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "About what?" "Giving up your simple life as Jim Watson. This is all pretty overwhelming." She gestured at the sprawling house, the manicured gardens, the distant view of the San Francisco Bay. James walked over and took her paint-stained hands in his. "The only thing I ever want to be simple about is this: I love you. I loved you when I was a handyman living above a hardware store, and I love you now. The money just means I can give you the art studio you've always dreamed of." Maya smiled, the same smile that had sustained him through months of text messages and growing connection. "And I love you too. Not James Wellington the billionaire or Jim Watson the handyman. Just you." Emma's laughter drifted across the garden as she and Caroline discovered a family of rabbits near the fountain. Watching them, James felt a completeness he had never experienced before his supposed death. Losing everything had taught him what truly mattered: the people who loved him not for what he could give them, but for who he chose to be. "Besides," Maya added, dabbing paint on his nose playfully, "Emma already decided you're part of our family. She doesn't care about the money either." "Our family," James repeated, thinking of Emma's rainbow letter drawing that now hung framed in his study. "I like the sound of that." Detective Rodriguez's investigation had not only brought down Vincent Cross but had also exposed a network of surveillance companies operating illegally across the country. James used his regained fortune to establish a foundation focused on digital privacy rights and supporting single mothers pursuing artistic careers. 6 months later, James Wellington and Maya Chen were married in the same garden where she had first set up her easel. Emma served as the flower girl, walking down the aisle with Caroline, and both girls declared themselves sisters before the ceremony even began. The wedding photographer captured the moment perfectly: a family born not from traditional circumstances, but from a desperate text message, a stranger's kindness, and the belief that sometimes the wrong number is exactly the right connection. In the background of every photo, barely visible but always present, was the lighthouse James could see from his bedroom window, the beacon that had guided him home to the life he was always meant to live.